Do you know why the elders say a child raised without stories is like a tree without roots? Watch till the end to uncover the shocking truth. The evening air in the Cameroonian village was thick with the scent of burning firewood. Crickets chirped in the background as Mommy Esther adjusted her wooden stool beneath the great baobab tree. Children gathered around, their faces glowing in the flickering lantern light. Some parents stood at a distance, listening quietly. Mommy Esther cleared her throat and smiled. Do you know why the elders say a child raised without stories is like a tree without roots? The children shook their heads, eager for her answer. Because stories teach us who we are, where we come from, and how we must live. She paused, looking at a mother cradling a restless baby. But today, I see children more in love with phones and television than with the wisdom of their ancestors. They know superheroes from distant lands, but not the heroes from our own soil. Her voice softened. Tell me, my children, what will happen if we forget our stories? A hush fell over the crowd. Then, in a small voice, a boy whispered, "We will be lost." Mommy Esther nodded. Yes, lost, but it is not too late. Tonight, I will tell you stories that will guide your hearts and sharpen your minds. But first, are you ready to listen? The children leaned in, eyes wide with anticipation. And with that, she began. Mommy Esther shifted in her seat, glancing at the eager faces before her. Long ago, she began, her voice smooth as the evening breeze. There was a tortoise known as Mbeku. He was clever, but his heart was full of tricks. The children gasped. They had heard of Mbeku before. His stories were always full of trouble. One day, the birds were invited to a great feast in the sky. Mbeku wanted to go, but how? He had no wings. So he came up with a plan. He convinced each bird to lend him a feather, promising to share the feast with them. The foolish birds agreed, and soon Mbeku had wings strong enough to fly. The children murmured, shaking their heads. They knew this would not end well. When they arrived, the host of the feast asked for their names. Mbeku, being the trickster he was, told everyone that his new name was all of you. So, when the food was served, the host said, "This food is for all of you," and Mbeku laughed, because that meant the food was all for him. A few children gasped in shock. That's not fair. A little girl cried. Mommy Esther nodded. It was not fair. The birds watched as Mbeku ate and ate, leaving them with nothing. Furious, they decided to teach him a lesson. One by one, they took back their feathers and flew away, leaving Mbeku stranded in the sky. What happened next? A boy whispered. Mommy Esther's face darkened. With no wings, Mbeku had no choice but to fall. Down, down, down he tumbled, crashing to the ground. His shell shattered into pieces, but because he was a cunning creature, he found a way to piece it back together, though it was never smooth again. She leaned forward, and that is why the tortoise's shell is cracked to this day, because of his greed and dishonesty. Silence filled the air as the children pondered the lesson. A mother cast a knowing glance at her son, who had been caught lying about stealing mangoes. Mommy Esther's eyes twinkled as she spoke her final words for the night. Remember, my children, lies may carry you high, but they will never carry you home. The night deepened and the fire crackled softly as Mommy Esther adjusted her wrapper. The children, now drawn deeper into the world of stories, huddled closer. She took a deep breath and continued. In a village much like ours, she began, there lived a boy named Ebai. He was strong, adventurous, but also stubborn. His father, a great hunter, always warned him never to enter the forbidden forest beyond the river. Why? A little girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because Mommy Esther said, lowering her voice. The forest was home to the talking drum, a spirit that lured disobedient children into danger. The children shuddered, but Mommy Esther continued. One evening, while his father was away, Ebai's curiosity got the best of him. He crossed the river and stepped into the forbidden forest. At first, all was silent. But then, boom, boom, boom. She mimicked the deep sound of a drum, making the children jump. The talking drum played, its rhythm sweet and hypnotic. Come closer, Ebai, it called. Come and dance. Come and take riches beyond your dreams. Ebai, excited and fearless, moved deeper into the trees. The drum led him on and on until he no longer knew his way back. The sun began to set and fear crept into his heart. He realized he was lost. Mommy Esther paused. The firelight flickered in the wide eyes of her audience. Ebai called out, "Drum, show me the way home." But the drum only laughed. "I do not take children home. I take them far, far away." A hush fell over the crowd. Ebai cried, but it was too late. His father had warned him, but he did not listen. Mommy Esther's voice softened. For days, the villagers searched. Some say he was never found. Others say his father, with all his wisdom, rescued him just in time. But one thing is certain, Ebai never disobeyed his father again. She looked at the children and their parents. "Tell me, my children, how many of you listen when your parents warn you?" A few heads dropped, avoiding her gaze. Mommy Esther smiled knowingly. Obedience is like a lamp in the darkness. Without it, you may walk into danger without even knowing. The lesson hung in the air as heavy as the night itself. The fire crackled, sending tiny sparks into the night sky. The children sat still, their eyes reflecting the flames. Mommy Esther rocked gently on her stool before beginning again. Once, there was a spider named Anansi. He was clever to clever. In fact, he believed wisdom was like a treasure, and he wanted to keep it all for himself. The children murmured. They had heard of Anansi before. He was famous for his tricks, but this time, his greed would teach a different lesson. Anansi traveled far and wide, gathering wisdom from the elders, from the river spirits, from the whispering trees. He stored it all in a great clay pot, believing that if no one else had wisdom, he would be the greatest of all. Mommy Esther leaned forward, lowering her voice. But Anansi was selfish. He did not want to share. So he decided to hide the pot of wisdom high in a tree where no one could reach it. A boy frowned. But why wouldn't he share? Because, my child, Mommy Esther said, some people believe that if others are wise, they will no longer be special. The boy nodded slowly, understanding. Anansi tied the pot to his belly and began climbing the tallest tree in the land. But the pot was heavy and he struggled. No matter how hard he tried, he could not reach the top. She paused, letting the tension build. Then, from below, his little son called out, "Father, why not tie the pot to your back instead of your belly? It will be easier to climb." The children gasped. Even Anansi's own child had wisdom. Mommy Esther smiled. Anansi froze. Here he was, hoarding wisdom. And yet a child had given him the smartest idea of all. Furious at himself, he flung the pot down in anger. It shattered and wisdom spilled everywhere. Into the rivers, the wind, the earth. That is why today, everyone, young or old, has a little bit of wisdom. The children giggled, imagining a frustrated Anansi staring at the broken pot. Mommy Esther's face turned serious. And so, my children, what do we learn? That wisdom is meant to be shared. A girl shouted. Yes, Mommy Esther nodded. If you keep knowledge to yourself, you will struggle like Anansi. But if you share, the whole world will grow wiser, including you. A father sitting nearby swallowed hard. He had never thought about how refusing to teach his children simple life lessons could make their futures harder. The fire crackled again. The lesson had been planted. The moon cast a soft glow over the village as Mommy Esther took a sip of water. She wiped her lips with the back of her hand, then clapped twice to get the children's attention. This next story, she said, is about a girl named Amana. She was beautiful, intelligent, and talented. But there was one problem. She never said thank you. The children exchanged glances. A few mothers shifted where they sat, glancing at their own children who often forgot their manners. Amana had everything she needed. Her parents loved her. Her friends shared their food with her. The village women braided her hair for free. But no matter how much kindness she received, she never once showed gratitude. Mommy Esther's voice dropped to a whisper. One day, the spirits of the land took notice. They decided to teach Amana a lesson. A chill ran through the group. Spirits, this was getting serious. While walking home one evening, Amana met an old woman carrying a heavy basket of yams. "My child, can you help me?" the woman asked. Amana sighed, annoyed, but she carried the basket. When they reached the woman's hut, the old woman handed Amana a small calabash. "Take this gift, my dear," she said. Amana snatched it and walked away without a word. Mommy Esther paused. What do you think happened next? She got cursed. A boy blurted out. Mommy Esther chuckled. Something like that. She leaned in. That night, when Amana opened the calabash, the wind howled. Instead of riches, a swarm of bees flew out. They stung her from head to toe. She screamed and ran to the river, but the water whispered, "You never thanked us when you drank from us." She ran to the trees, but they rustled. "You never thanked us for our shade." Even the ground beneath her feet grumbled. "You never thanked us for holding you up." The children shivered, imagining Amana's terror. She ran back to the old woman's hut, crying, "Please, forgive me." The old woman smiled. "Now you understand. Gratitude is not a small thing. It is the key to receiving more blessings." Mommy Esther sat back. From that day on, Amana never forgot to say thank you. A mother nudged her son, who had been refusing to thank his grandmother for gifts. The boy lowered his head, deep in thought. Mommy Esther smiled. "So tell me, my children, what do we say when someone helps us?" "Thank you," the children chorused. The lesson had been learned. The night was getting cooler, but no one moved from their spot. The flickering fire cast long shadows on the ground, and Mommy Esther smiled as she watched the children's eager faces. "Tonight," she said, "I will tell you about a boy named Tambo. He was strong, quick, and full of dreams. But there was one thing he lacked: patience." A few boys in the crowd sat up straighter. They knew what it was like to want things quickly. Tambo wanted to be the fastest runner in the village. But he didn't want to train. He didn't want to practice. He wanted to wake up one morning and outrun everyone, including his own shadow. The children giggled. That was impossible. One day, he went to the village elder and said, "Teach me the secret to speed so I can run faster than my shadow." The elder chuckled. "You must train every day. You must run at sunrise and sunset. You must eat well and rest." But Tambo frowned. "No, Baba, I want a shortcut. Give me a charm, a secret herb, anything to make me fast right now." Mommy Esther shook her head. The elder sighed. "Very well," he said. "Go to the great hill at dawn. Run down as fast as you can. If you are meant to be the fastest, your shadow will never catch you." The children leaned in, holding their breath. At sunrise, Tambo ran to the hill. His heart pounded as he took off, sprinting down the slope with all his strength. But something strange happened. No matter how fast he ran, his shadow ran with him. He pushed harder, faster, but his shadow never left. In his frustration, he stumbled and fell, rolling down the hill into the river. Laughter erupted from the children. The elder found him soaked and exhausted. He smiled and said, "You see, my son, there is no shortcut to greatness. Hard work and patience are the only way to achieve your dreams. The faster you try to outrun the process, the harder you will fall." Mommy Esther looked at the children and their parents. "So, my children, tell me, should we rush through life? Or should we be patient and work hard?" "Work hard," they chorused. A father in the crowd nodded slowly, thinking about how often he had looked for quick success without putting in the effort. The lesson wasn't just for the children, it was for everyone. The fire flickered, casting moving shadows on the ground. Mommy Esther stretched her hands toward the warmth, then turned back to the children. "Tonight's story," she said, "is about two friends, Ekong and Bella. They were like brothers, but one had an honest heart, and the other had a tongue that dripped with lies. The children exchanged glances. They knew how dangerous lies could be. In their village, people whispered about a strange skull deep in the forest. It was said to speak only to those who had never told a lie. Kong, the truthful one, was curious, but Mbella laughed. "It's just a story," he said. But deep down, he wanted to see the skull for himself. Mommy Esther's voice dropped to a whisper. One evening, Kong entered the forest alone. After walking for hours, he finally saw it. A white skull resting among dry leaves. A hush fell over the children. Kong swallowed hard. "Skull, is it true you can speak?" She let the silence stretch. Then, in a raspy voice, she answered, "Yes, but only to those who tell the truth." The children gasped. Kong ran back to the village, shouting, "The skull speaks! The skull speaks!" But Mbella, full of jealousy, did not believe him. "If the skull speaks, I will hear it too," he said. Mommy Esther shook her head. The next night, Mbella went alone. He found the skull and demanded, "Speak to me." But the skull was silent. Mbella grew angry. "Liar," he shouted. "You spoke to Kong, but not to me." The children held their breath. "The spirits of the forest do not like liars," Mommy Esther said gravely. That night, Mbella never returned. Some say he was swallowed by the earth. Others say his own lies led him into danger. She paused, letting the weight of the story settle. Then she asked, "So tell me, my children, what happens when we lie?" "We lose trust," a little girl said. "And what kind of friends should we choose?" "Honest ones." The children chorused. Mommy Esther nodded. Somewhere in the back, a father looked down, thinking about a friend who had deceived him in business. The lesson wasn't just for the young, it was for everyone. The night breeze whispered through the trees, but no one moved. The fire crackled, filling the silence. Mommy Esther smiled knowingly. This next tale would leave a deep mark. "There once was a tortoise named Engwagu," she began, "who was known across the land for his greed. No matter how much he had, he always wanted more." The children giggled. Everyone knew tortoises were often tricksters in folktales. One year, a terrible drought came. Food was scarce and the animals grew hungry. But then the birds brought good news. There was to be a great feast in the sky. The sky people had invited only the birds. But Engwagu, being clever, had an idea. Mommy Esther's voice dropped mischievously. He begged the birds to give him feathers so he could make wings. "Please, my friends, let me join you," he pleaded. The kind birds agreed, plucking a feather each and giving it to him. The children leaned in, curious. Engwagu stitched the feathers together, creating wings. As the birds soared to the heavens, he followed. When they reached the Sky People's village, tables of food stretched as far as the eye could see. Golden yams, juicy fruits, steaming fish. Mommy Esther's eyes twinkled. But Engwagu was not just greedy for food, he was greedy for power. He turned to the Sky People and said, "My name is all of you, for I speak on behalf of these birds." The children gasped. So when the Sky People brought food and asked, "Who is this meal for?" Engwagu smiled and said, "It is for all of you." And so he ate first, taking the biggest portions. The birds watched in shock as he devoured their feast. Mommy Esther shook her head. At last, when the Sky People brought the final plate, the birds could take no more. Angry and hungry, they plucked back their feathers and flew home, leaving Engwagu stranded in the sky. Laughter erupted, but Mommy Esther lifted a finger. Engwagu begged for help, but the birds were gone. With no choice, he let go and fell. She clapped her hands loudly, making the children jump. Down, down, down he fell, until, crack, he landed hard on the ground. That is why, to this day, the tortoise's shell is cracked. The laughter faded as the lesson settled in. "So tell me, my children," Mommy Esther asked, "what happens when we are greedy?" "We lose everything," they chorused. "And what should we learn?" "To be content with what we have." A mother glanced at her son, who often fought his siblings over food. The boy lowered his head, thinking. Mommy Esther smiled. Her work was being done. The fire dimmed slightly, its glow casting eerie shadows on the ground. Mommy Esther's face grew serious as she leaned forward. "This story," she said, "is about a girl named Nkem. She was beautiful and loved to dance, but she had one weakness. She never listened to her elders." The children sat up straight. They knew that in the village, disobedience could bring trouble. Nkem's mother always warned her, never stay out too late. The spirits roam the forest at night, and they do not like to be disturbed. But Nkem, being stubborn, never listened. She loved the thrill of the night air, the freedom of dancing under the moon. A girl in the crowd whispered, "She's going to get into trouble." Mommy Esther nodded. One evening, after a festival, Nkem wandered into the forest alone, her feet moving to the rhythm of unseen drums. She twirled and spun, laughing, until she noticed something strange. The drumming hadn't stopped, but the festival was far behind her. The children shivered. Then she saw them, tall, pale figures dressed in flowing white robes. Their eyes glowed softly as they clapped and chanted, "Dance with us, child, dance with us." Mommy Esther's voice dropped to a whisper. Nkem, thrilled by their music, danced. Faster and faster she moved, her feet no longer under her control. The spirits cheered, their eyes gleaming. She paused, but soon Nkem realized she was exhausted. "Please, let me stop," she begged. But the spirits laughed. "Did we not tell you to dance?" They clapped louder, forcing her legs to move. A hush fell over the crowd. For 3 nights, Nkem danced. When her mother finally found her, she was weak and barely breathing. The village healer saved her, but she never danced again. From that day on, she listened to her mother's words. For she had learned, when elders warn you, it is not to control you, but to protect you. Mommy Esther glanced at the children. "So, my dear ones, what do we learn?" "To listen to our elders," they shouted. A teenage girl, who often ignored her mother's warnings, swallowed hard. The lesson had reached her heart. The fire crackled one last time for the night, sending tiny embers into the air. The children were sleepy but eager for the final tale. Mommy Esther's voice was soft yet firm as she began. "There was once a powerful king named Obasi. He ruled with great wisdom, but he had one flaw. He spoke carelessly. His words were sharp, cutting like a warrior's blade, and he never thought before he spoke." Some of the adults in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. They knew the damage that reckless words could cause. One day, during a meeting with his chiefs, a young messenger accidentally spilled water at his feet. The king's face darkened with anger. "Fool," he shouted, "you are useless. I curse you to become like the wind, heard but never seen." Mommy Esther let the words hang in the air. The boy's eyes widened in fear. He gasped and disappeared. The entire court watched in horror as his voice echoed through the halls. But his body was gone. The children held their breath. The gods were displeased. That night, as King Obasi slept, his own words returned to haunt him. "You will know the pain of reckless speech," a voice whispered. When he awoke the next morning, he opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Gasps filled the air. The mighty king had lost his voice. He could no longer command, no longer give orders. He wrote messages, but his people no longer feared him. Without his words, his power faded. One by one, his allies left him. Mommy Esther let silence settle over the crowd. Desperate, he searched for the old village seer. The seer told him, "Only the one you cursed can return your voice." But how do you ask for forgiveness when you have no words? A mother in the audience nodded slowly. Words once spoken could not be taken back. The king wept. His heart was heavy with regret. So, for the first time in his life, he spoke not with his mouth, but with his actions. He wrote letters of kindness. He helped the poor. He built homes for the homeless. And slowly, the whispers of the wind carried his change of heart to the invisible boy. Mommy Esther smiled. One morning, the king awoke to a soft breeze, and then a voice, the boy's voice, spoke, "I forgive you." At that moment, King Obasi's voice returned, but he was no longer the same man. He had learned the power of words and used them wisely from that day on. The fire crackled as the children sat in deep thought. "So tell me, my children," Mommy Esther asked, "what should we do before we speak?" "Think," they chorused. "And should we use our words to hurt or to heal?" "To heal." A father clenched his fists, thinking about harsh words he had spoken to his son earlier that day. He exhaled slowly. He would make things right. Mommy Esther stretched, yawning. "Now, my children, go home and dream well. And remember, our ancestors gave us these stories not just to entertain, but to teach. Hold them in your hearts, and you will never lose your way." The night air was filled with murmurs as families rose and made their way home. But deep inside their hearts, the lessons of the night remained. As the story comes to an end, I want you to remember, words have power. They can build or destroy, heal or hurt. Just like King Obasi learned, we must choose our words wisely because once spoken, they can never be taken back. If you enjoyed this story and the lesson it carries, don't stop here. African folk tales are filled with wisdom, mystery, and deep life lessons that can transform the way we think and live. So, what do you think? Have you ever said something you regretted? Or maybe you've experienced the power of words in a surprising way. Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss another powerful, mind-blowing African folk tale. See you in the next story. Stay wise, stay kind, and keep learning from the wisdom of our ancestors. Love you all.